if you're in pre-course or if you're not in pre-course, kind of what I'm going to talk about is methods of taking notes, right? This is something I'm gonna teach what I wish somebody, or I'm gonna explain what I wish somebody would have explained to me. I think prior to when I went into the DSI. So, as you all know, the DSI is a lot. There's a lot of material. There isn't necessarily that much time for you to, for you to absorb everything. And what I would argue is don't try to learn everything while the DSI is happening, but make sure you can get to everything while the DSI is happening. So I'm going to walk through just a simple strategy. And this may seem overly simple. This may seem overly simple to you, but I'm going to try to explain why I think what I'm going to recommend to you is a good way to go. So I think I made some notes about what I wanted to talk about. All right, so what I'm going to recommend is that you use a single document for note taking, and that may sound wild. Like, why wouldn't you separate your note taking into different documents that are named well, or have the date, or have some kind of good organization scheme? And what I'm going to suggest is that while the DSI is happening, it's going to be difficult to effectively organize your materials in a way that will also allow you for quick information retrieval. So where I'm going to start with this is on GitHub. So I'm just going to go to GitHub, and I'll go to my account. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new repository. And what I'll call this is, for me, I'm going to call this Delmi, and then I'm going to call it master notes. And or maybe I'll call it master DSI notes. It doesn't really matter. Obviously, if you're going to make something like this, you probably don't want to call it Delmi. That's just my key to know that I can just delete this. I have various notes documents, but to this day, I keep all my current notes in a single document. And I hope that I can show you why shortly, and make a justification for this that you'll feel good about. For this kind of document, I generally will make it private. And I can do that because I pay the what I think of as sort of insanely low monthly subscription cost for GitHub. I think it's under $10. It might be around $10. I recommend you do that because there are going to be things that you want to work on that you don't necessarily want just exposed out in the world. But it's really your call, right? You're keeping a notes document. I don't think that your notes document is going to negatively reflect on you, but do keep in mind that in the DSI, there are going to be some things that you are going to be asked not to share, potentially, because either that is some proprietary data, or, well, really it's just that. There might be some proprietary stuff. Whether proprietary to Galvanize or to another party. So, my recommendation is keep your notes private, because you might be linking out to something. I'm going to also initialize this repository with a README. And the idea here is that your README is going to be where everything lives. I'm going to add a Git Ignore, and I'm going to just set this to Python, because you might want to put other things in your notes document. Like you might want to put some, or in your notes repository, you might want to put some Jupyter notebooks in there. And in such a case, you don't want to store all the, what is that? There's a directory of essentially timestamps and instances of your Jupyter notebook. And I would just say, you don't really want that. So I'd throw a Git Ignore in here as well. So I'm going to create the repository. And from here, what I'll do is I'll just clone this down. So I'm going to copy this. I have a disposable directory called Delmi Sandbox on my machine. I like to have a sandbox somewhere where I can just write stuff that if I were to delete this tomorrow, it wouldn't matter to me. So I'll just do git clone, and I'll pull that whole thing down. That whole one file that's in there, and or one text document, markdown document, and then I'll go in there. Delmi master notes, Delmi, there's a lot of Delmis in here. So Delmi master DSI notes. Once I'm in there, I'm just going to, I'll open this whole thing up. I'll do code dot, and that gives me, in VS Code, that gets me, I should have my Git Ignore here. And if I look at this, you know, this is just all the types of files that I'm going to block by default. You know, pretty easy. I don't need to worry about that. The only thing I'm going to worry about actually is this README. And this is going to cover, lightly cover some Markdown. I'm not going to get too deeply into Markdown, I guess. But I'm going to show you the basics of what you'll want to use, want to know how to use for taking notes. So I'll just change this to master DSI notes. Or maybe I'll just change it to DSI notes, however I'm going to do that. Let's make some notes. So let me think of just something that will be easy to think about. Probably the place that I would start is with some links, okay? So I'm gonna make something called relevant links. And offhand, I don't remember how this renders using VS Code, because I almost never look at the actual render of Markdown. VS Code render Markdown. Control-Shift-V. Maybe it's Command-Shift-V. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. So I'm going to split this to the right. And, oh. Let me just learn how to use VS Code again really fast. Okay, perfect. So what you can see here on the left is how you can see how we write this and then how it renders. Okay, so under relevant links, maybe I'll just track something down. There's on Stack Overflow. I look this up so much that there's an immediate, I can find it right away. So it's not that I really need to put this in these notes, but you know, I might as well if I want to click through to it, you know, just offhand. So this is visualizing all these SciPy stats distributions, and there's a big block of code somewhere at the bottom of this, or a link out to there's a link to a Jupyter notebook, and then the code to generate all these. So this is kind of extremely useful. And this is the kind of thing that I would put in my notes document. So under the relevant links. And usually what I would do is something like this. This is how you create, essentially create a link. You've got brackets followed by parentheses. The link itself goes in the parentheses, and in the brackets you put some sort of description. So I'm going to call this all the I'll just call it what it says over here, right? Visualizing the SciPy stats distributions. Visualizing SciPy stats. And maybe I'll just follow this, right? I can put these tick marks around SciPy stats, and look how it renders over here. This makes a nice little, it looks like code, right? SciPy stats. And this is a working link if I click on it. So that's a sort of first step. And, you know, if I'm going to view this, maybe I'll view it in the in VS Code. More likely, I'm going to have a tab open in my browser, and I'll view it over there. So to do that, I'm just going to do git add, and I'll add my README, git commit, and with these kinds of note documents, honestly, I'm not going to make good commit messages because it kind of doesn't matter in this case to me. And I'll show you something that might make your commits much faster if you want. So I'm going to do git commit m, and I'm going to do add link. I don't know. I usually do write good commit messages, honestly. And then I'm going to push it. And that's going to be on GitHub. If I go over here and refresh this page, notice I've got something rendered right here. And this is a fairly simple URL. It's a quick URL to get to. I can just bookmark it, and I can grow this document, right? So that's where we're starting. And maybe, I don't know, maybe you want a quick link out to, let's do LaTeX, Stack Overflow LaTeX primer. How about that? This might be it. There is some page. Honestly, I wish I had the link to this in my notes somewhere, because there is a great LaTeX primer. LaTeX. Oh, it's a MathJax primer. That's what it is. MathJax. Yep, here it is. So this is amazing. Something that you're going to find with Jupyter Notebooks is you'll have this ability to embed LaTeX, and it's going to look nice. So this is sort of you're not going to be able to do this in your Markdown except in the render of VS Code potentially, because your Markdown is going to render these sort of like chunks of LaTeX as text, I believe. Unless they've changed that on GitHub. But if you have a Jupyter Notebook, the Jupyter Notebook will allow for the render of these to be essentially images, or rendered as actual usable mathematical characters. Like, this is nice. If you can put this in your notes, that can be super helpful. But I use this reference on Stack Exchange all the time. So I'm just going to add this link in really quick. And yeah, let's see if we can actually render. Well, yeah, I'll just put this in here. I'll also share this link with you guys because I think it's going to be helpful. This is the MathJax basic tutorial and quick reference. Let me just clean that link up a little bit. Yeah, and so notice what it looks like over here. This is nice. And let's continue from here into something else, something completely different. So, oh, I know. Let me share with you just a quick bash script, okay? And this is something that I use and I'll show you how it works for me. In the terminal, I've got something called Git Adder. Actually, I think it's all one word. I've got Git Adder, and I've also got something called Git Watch. I'll share Git Adder with you, and message me if you want Git Watch. But Git Adder is going to make a generic time-stamped commit. I do not recommend that you do this for any software project, software dev project, or any collaborative project you're doing with somebody, or even your own project that you're trying to have good commit messages for. I'm recommending that you only do this in special circumstances if you want generic commit messages for, say, a notes document like I'm using here. So all this does is it pulls and it writes a quick commit message, and that looks something like up here, auto updated. This is my message that I wrote in here, but auto updated Monday 24/17. So it's just time stamping the change to README. Again, we've got this being rendered up here. So cool. So this is a relevant links section. The next section that I'm going to make is a topic section. And so what I usually do, what I personally do, is I'll make a sort of a break line. Like this is sort of like an HR tag, if you're familiar with. It is an HR tag if you're familiar with HTML. So you can either use HR. I actually prefer using dashed lines because Markdown for me is pretty readable at this point. Obviously, it's more readable here on the right than it is on the left, but I just work in Markdown so much that even some of those, even this kind of stuff, even LaTeX is fairly readable to me at this point. Not as readable as the mathematical formulation, but it is readable when these kinds of things, these markdowns and markups, become more readable as you use them more. So what I do here, I usually give a couple spaces, and notice I've got this single hash right here. The single hash in front of something is the largest render size, right? Relevant links is rendering large right here. 2 hashes will render smaller, right? So I've got this title DSI notes, and I've got this double hash for relevant links. I usually just use this a single hash for anything that looks like the title of a section. So I'm going to start another section here, and I'll call it bash. Let's just call it bash scripting. So if I'm going to be bash scripting, the first thing that I want to figure out is, well, oh yeah, I was going to show you this Git Adder, Git Adder function. So I need to access my my bash profile. So where is that? I might do something like this. I might say bash profile location on OS X. Now you might be looking at this and like, that's pretty verbose, and you're not wrong. Maybe what I'll do is instead do something like this: bash profile location on OS X as a bullet point under bash scripting, so it doesn't take up as much space. It doesn't really matter. It's more about whether or not you can quickly find something in this document. And of course you can, because you can Command F or Control F and search for something, right? And if I'm like bash, well, I'm going to find it right away. Everything that's related to bash. Anyway, that's a little digression, but we're going to come back to that. So the location of this on your Mac is tilde./bash_profile. So this is just informational, and it's something that's easy to forget. So how do you open this file? I'm going to go over here, and I'm just going to actually open this in Vim. So I'll do Vim /dot bash profile. Oh, whoops. I am in V or I am in Vim. Oh, my Vim on this computer doesn't have nice color coding. Well, that's sad. Okay. Then I'll just open it with VS Code. And later I'll go back and make Vim look a little nicer. Okay, so here's my bash profile. I've got a bunch of stuff in here. I've got, this function, getAddr. So the thing I might do in my README is make something that's like, make a bash function, that might be something that I want to be able to reference every now and then. And one really wonderful thing about Markdown is that you can create these little code cells. They're not runnable, but here is a nice render of that getAddr function that will auto add, will pull, add, commit, and push in one little thing. And I can use this as a template, right? I can use this as a template to write other functions. And that's really why I'm putting it here. I'm not necessarily putting it here because I'm going to reference it in any other way. I might just say to myself, ask myself, well, how do I write a bash function? I think I'm going to do that again at some point. Maybe I should put something in here so that I have a template, I have a reference. So I can do that. Here's another really wonderful thing about this. These triple ticks, this gives you this code box, right? I can throw in here bash, and look what happens, right? I get color coding within here, and I get color coding over here in the render of this this text. Now, one thing that you might notice, this forces scrolling, which I don't really like. I'd rather it word wrapped, which I can set it to do in here. But again, I look at this over like in the browser more often than I'll look at it locally. I'll take notes locally, or while I'm working on a project, if I find myself Googling something more than 2 or 3 times, I'm going to take it and just copy the results of that into my README. And you can imagine this is going to get messy at some point, but remember, does it matter if it's messy when you can just Command F? While you're in class or while you're coding something, you can be just in real time adding things to this README file, and it will grow and it'll get unwieldy. But you can always Command F in here or Control F in here and find what you need quickly. So yeah, so this is just bash scripting. Let's do let's do another section. We'll call it we'll just call it Python. Let's call it Python. Let's do comprehensions. So Python, and maybe I'll do a subsection called comprehensions. And let's say I just learned comprehensions. I am very likely to start with code here. And again, you can just do Python next to the triple ticks, and this will give you color coding for Python. Let's say I want to give myself a very simple template for a comprehension. I'm going to do num for num in range, and then just 100, right? So this gives me that basic, this is just going to give me a list of numbers from 0 to 99, but this gives me that basic template for a comprehension. And maybe even further, I can do, I could make a section called functions to remember, right? And these are the kinds of functions that you might need to write more than once, right? And you want to just snag a quick quick something out of here, right? So Python, and maybe I'll write in his prime function, right? So def is prime, or let me do one that you've all written over and over again. Factorial, right? Factorial of some number is going to be the that product starting at 1, and we'll just do for num in the range to n plus 1, right? And product times gets the num, and we return the product. Now, you all know how to write factorial, but what about the binomial PMF, right? Do you know how to hand code that offhand? No, you'd have to look it up. And this is a good reason. If you know it's something you're going to need to look up periodically, well, throw it into your README. If you know you're going to look it up more than twice, throw it into your README. There's a section we might do called, this is something that you're all going to learn about very soon. You might have a section called cross-validation or machine learning workflow, or and maybe I'll do it like this. Maybe this is data science workflow, although having data science in here is a little bit redundant. It's all going to be data science. So maybe I'll just call this machine learning workflow, and then have a section in here called cross-validation. And in here, I'm probably going to have something detailing a train test split. You're going to be doing so many train test splits that you might as well just have a box of code, right? A box of code that you can snag out of here and paste into your text editor at any point. That's quick. It's quick. You don't need to retype it every time. And there are going to be some things where there are going to be some moments where if you are trying to retype every step of a train test split, you're going to have errors in there, and it's going to be tricky troubleshooting those. It's going to be easier if you have a nice standard approach to cross-validation, and then you modify it as you need to. And at some point, you're going to be doing k-fold cross-validation, right? And you're going to have more robust cross-validation. You're going to have bootstrap in here, right? You're going to have a basic bootstrap approach. And at some point, you're going to have maybe a section for sorting algorithms, right? And you're going to have, you're going to have bubble sort. You're going to have, and you want to have a couple different ways to perform bubble sort. Maybe, the definition, you have like the, hand-coded algorithm here. And then you have also, heads up, you want to usually have a space. You can't predict the render sometimes for GitHub, so you want to have an empty line between anything and these code cells. So you might have a hand-coded version of bubble sort, and then you might have a library called version of bubble sort. Okay. So I'm hoping you all get the idea here. This is this may seem overly simplistic in some ways, but I guarantee you're not going to want to be fishing through 10 different notes documents, and you're not going to be wanting to rely on Google constantly to find things that you don't know where or what they are exactly. When you're under pressure, when you've got like half an hour to code something that if you were typing straight that whole time, you might get done in 20-25 minutes. Well, skip the typing, start doing some copy pasting, and have a good notes document, a comprehensive notes document, even if it is sort of clumsily or haphazardly organized. It's going to be better for you for most of you, I'm not trying to speak for everybody here, but it's going to be better for many of you to have a document like this and to keep adding things into it so that you have a place to find things. Than it will be to try to memorize all these things or try to have them living in Jupyter notebooks all the time, because Jupyter notebooks, you're going to have to spin them up, right? Although I have a caveat to that I'll show in just a second. Okay, so that's the general idea. I'm going to check the Slack in case there are questions. Sorry, I've just been talking this whole way. Oh, I was just about to answer this question. Any way to reference internally on your notes, like a specific related bullet point or table of contents entry? Yes. I don't generally do that, to be honest, because I just Command F or Control F and just cycle through things a lot of the time, but you definitely can. And let's see, I'll just mark down internal reference, internal link, internal reference. It's really easy. I just don't remember how to do it. How to link a named anchor. A heading in this. Okay, so in standard markdown, place an anchor where you want to link to and refer to it on the same page by link. So this is the kind of thing that, you know, maybe somebody should throw in their notes, right? Maybe just under relevant links, and I really don't think this is a bad idea, have something that's just called Markdown, right? And any notes on Markdown. So, you know, this would be called reference links or internal, what do they call these? Anchors, reference links, anchors, reference links, internal reference links. And just paste this in standard markdown, place an anchor, name ABCD where you want to link to and refer to it on the same page by link text, right? So what if we did something up here, and I'll make a table of contents, very brief, and we'll do markdown, and so place an anchor where you want to link to, right? So let's do this. I want to link to markdown, and maybe I'll just call this markdown, or maybe I would randomly generate something. Oh, sorry. Am I getting this wrong? Where you want to link to and refer to it on the same page by, oh yeah, here we go. And then I'll just grab this, throw it up here, markdown, and then hash markdown. And let's see if that works. I still have the name ABCD there, which is not what I want, but okay. So if I click on markdown, oh, you know what? Let me put this up on GitHub. And let's see if this works how I expect it to. Oh. Let me make sure. Oh, I did not save it. That's why. Okay. Try that again. Yeah, just like that. So there's definitely a way to do that. And what I'll do is maybe I'll rename this to Master DSI Notes Example or DSI Notes Example, and make it not private so that y'all have kind of a template to go off of. I don't know why I didn't just do that in the first place. It seems sort of obvious now that I think about it. But yeah, there's you'll be able to just clone this down, or fork it and clone the fork, and maybe set it to private if you want to, if you are planning on linking to anything that might be proprietary within there. Let me check to see the follow-up on that question. It appears you are suggesting to organize by topic rather than chronologically. Is that right? I personally, I would organize by topic. Now, it is pretty helpful to have a chronology of the DSI while you're in it, because you might be like, well, what did we do last Thursday? And last Thursday will feel like a month ago. So it's kind of nice to be able to say, we did this last Thursday. But so you could go about it. Here's the cool thing. In this format, you could potentially just put the date here, right? You could just say, well, what's the date? And every new we're at the 28th, right? So this could be 2019, right? 2019. Oh my God, it is 2020. How could I forget that, right? 2020, 09, 28. And I could organize my notes in a chronology, and then always continue from where I'm at the bottom. And what that might allow me to do is, I still have Command F, I still have Control F, right? And that's really that's your miracle worker here. It's having a quick way to perform information retrieval. I personally like being topic organized, because what I find is that code tends to get reused a lot. And if I have a section, and if there's, probably the most important section I would recommend that you have, it would be, matplotlib.pyplot visualizations, right? Because every plot that you write from scratch is going to be an accomplishment. And if you write it once, you might want to save yourself the time of needing to write it again and just have that code to snag and adapt. Especially with plotting. I would say with plotting, but also with pandas operations that you will perform regularly. Because I think I probably said this to a number of you in one-on-ones, or if you were in premium prep. People get stuck. The place where I see people get stuck the most is in pandas and in plotting. That's just what I see. And if you have a quick reference that you've built for pandas, everything that you might do in pandas that you need to look up, it's right there. It's not a mystery. You're not going to be tracking down the same thing over and over again, because that is time consuming. So whether you go chronologically, whether you go topic in a topic-oriented way, I think those two, that just depends on you. And I like a topic-oriented way because of reusable code. But your code is just as reusable if it's in this document anywhere. And as long as there are words nearby it or things that you're doing in it that you can search for. Also, I really like taking chronological notes, but for this I went topic oriented. But yeah, it's tricky. I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. Cool. All right. So I'm trying to think if there was something else specifically that I wanted to talk about with note taking. Yeah, I think I covered most everything that I intended on covering. Oh, I know what I wanted to talk about just briefly. So let's say I want to have well, first let me embed an image. Let's do that. xkcd cross validation. Is that the comic that I'm thinking of? Machine learning. Oh, this works. I don't know. This is your machine learning system. Yep, you pour the data into this big pile of linear algebra, then collect the answers on the other side. What if the answers are wrong? Just stir the pile until they start looking right. Sure. So let me copy the image address and make sure that that is rendering. Cool. I'll just put a quick image in this document. Of course, this, maybe what I'll do is put this under Markdown, right, where it would make the most sense. So Markdown, anchors, let's do images. And this is going to be simply, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure it's just that. And I'll add some aside text. Oh, yeah, this is it. So here's the render of it over here. That's really nice. And let's see, stir the pile. And I'll push that up, and we'll be able to see that on GitHub. And we do, right? Now, you can't see the actual snippet here that renders this. If I wanted to make that happen, and in this case, that's what I would recommend you do. Take this and just throw this in its own little code cell like this, right? And then you've got a quick reference that you can also see on GitHub. And again, the logic here with having this sync to GitHub is if you're on a different computer, or if you want to share this with somebody, you can add them as a collaborator. It's just a nice place to have, I can go over here, I can Command F, Control F to search within here as well, right? Markdown. And that'll, the actual search navigation within Chrome is pretty good. Within Firefox as well. They're both really good. So, I can look up SciPy and see that that's the only occurrence of SciPy. Okay. There's a question in here. Can VS Code's Jupyter Notebook be used as a README file? Here we wouldn't have to spin up. And the way I would answer that is I don't have an answer to that. I don't actually have an answer to that question because in general, I'll use Jupyter Notebooks. I won't even use Jupyter Lab much, and I will spin up a Jupyter Notebook. I'll just spin up the server really quick and use it directly, and that's probably me being a minor Luddite and not moving into Jupyter Lab or using VS Code's Jupyter extension. But honestly, part of that is I kind of don't like VS Code. Just got to say it. There are a number of other text editors that I prefer, namely Sublime Text and Vim, actually. But I use VS Code primarily right now because that's what that is sort of the most universal text editor that we use. Also, pair coding on it is easy, and that's why I use it. But I don't use Jupyter within it. But on the topic of Jupyter, what I would recommend, and I'll just do this really quickly to give you a sense of what I mean. What I would recommend is that you make a directory for your Jupyter Notebooks. And you say, so I'll just make a directory and I'll call it Notebooks. and I'll go into notebooks. Why not? Oh, actually, first I'll make a new tab, and I will run I have this diabolical Git function that will sync every minute, and this is the kind of thing that if you do something like this, you don't ever want to tell anybody, because they will find it to be a Git. I should call it, instead of Git watch, I should call it Git abomination. It's really not what you should do. I only do it when I'm teaching, honestly, because I don't want to flip back over to I don't want to flip to the terminal, git add, git commit, good message, git push. I don't want to do that in real time while I'm teaching. So instead I have a function that syncs to GitHub, and I never use this on projects I'm working on. I only use this when I'm teaching, or I'll use this when I'm taking notes, actually, because I don't really ever worry about it. So I'm just going to run that for a second while I kind of demonstrate what I mean by... I would demonstrate what I mean, but I haven't said what I mean yet. I think it's a good idea to use Jupyter Notebooks, but use them in a way to link out, right? So, for example, if I wanted to, over here, have a, let's say a derivations, right? A derivations section. In this set of derivations, I would just have a bunch of links to Jupyter Notebooks. So derivation of a perceptron, for instance. So this notebook doesn't exist at this point, but I'll make a notebook really quick over here, actually here. So I'll go into my notebooks directory, and I'll run Jupyter Notebook, and I'll make a notebook called, I'll title it derivation of a perceptron. Now I'm not going to fill this in, but I just want to demonstrate. So this is going to sync with GitHub presently, right? I'll go ahead and reload this. Let's see if that did sync up yet. Probably not. Oh, it may have. Okay. So, of course, this doesn't link anywhere because it wouldn't have. Well, I didn't put a link in the first place. But let's see. The notebooks directory hasn't actually synced up yet. So why don't I? Actually, I'll kill the git watch and I'll do just git adder really quick, because that'll be quicker, because there's a timer otherwise. So we've got notebooks, we've got this notebooks directory, I've got this derivation of a perceptron. A very, very nice thing about GitHub is it will render this Jupyter Notebook. I'm going to click through to it. And often, it's unfortunate, but often this will actually, this render will actually fail, and you'll have to reload it again. That's a big reason why I don't necessarily recommend using using Jupyter Notebooks, but you can save your Jupyter Notebooks as HTML, and you could. Well, you know what? What I'm going to recommend is just technically a little bit convoluted. So what I'll say is just, if you have short Jupyter Notebooks, they're more likely to render. And an encapsulated idea like the derivation of a perceptron, you can link to that from your README, right? From your README on your base page. So how I would do that is just have that notebook pushed up, and take the link to the Python notebook, the Jupyter Notebook, and put it like this, right? That said, I would do as much as I could within the README itself and link out to set to other materials as little as possible, right? If you have some supplementary materials like derivation of a perceptron, where the LaTeX is going to be important, right? Where you are going to want to write things in a way that is mathematically appropriate as opposed to just Python. Or if you want to have demonstrations of visualizations, right? A bunch of plots or something like that. That might be a use case to link out to a notebook, but I wouldn't rely too heavily on the notebooks. I would rely mostly on the Markdown file. So that said, let me sync this. Oop. Wherever that is, there we go. And now let me load that again. When I go to derivation of a perceptron, this should take me to the notebook itself. So that's how I would handle Jupyter Notebooks in this kind of note-taking framework. Again, just my suggestion, not necessarily the way to go. But I definitely think having this single README file as your source of truth, as your massive, ever-growing mess that you can search, I think that is the way to go. I really do. And keep in mind, this file can grow to 300,000 lines before VS Code starts crashing out on it. Probably less than that, honestly. But you're likely not gonna get to 300,000 lines. And if you do, you can trim it back. You can trim it back or make a second file at that point. Let me see. Okay. Can I demonstrate the git adder function more closely? If you delete I can in a second. Let me. I'm gonna wrap up very shortly, but yeah, I'm happy to show the git adder function. I think it can be really helpful for quick commits. Then again, you want to have meaningful commits. So I would say only use git adder on things that you are working in directly, or modify the function so that it takes a commit message. That's another way to effectively use it. But let me look at your other question first. If you delete repos on the GitHub website, will you have to then manually delete on your local machine? I'm not sure that I understand your question exactly. If you delete repos on the GitHub website, yeah, if you delete it on GitHub, it doesn't automatically delete it from your local machine, if that's the question. That would be, I'm going to show you a dangerous command for bash. So make a bash function. So I would probably make something called basic commands, and so there's something called rm. So what I'll say recursively delete a directory, and that's rm-rf, and then the directory name. So that's how you delete it locally. You'd go to the parent directory and rm-rf directory name, something like that. Sorry, not something like that. That's how you would do it, or one way to do it. So let's take a look at that that git adder function, and then I'm going to sign off. I'll make this repo public and just play around with it a little bit. Yeah, I'll just make it public, and if there's something else that occurs to me for, I'll just call this DSI notes template, something like that. And I'll throw it in the links of this video as well. I'm trying to think if there's something else I should do. But yeah, all right. So let's look at this function, and let's just talk through it really fast. So in Bash, this is how you define a function. Just function, getattr. This should, I know a lot of you are using Z shell, which is fine. Defining functions is, I think, exactly the same. I don't think there's any difference. I just, again, I'm kind of a Luddite with some things. I tend to use Bash a lot more. But I believe everything in Z shell is backward compatible to Bash. So, you should be able to, there should be a document if it's not your Bash profile. I'm almost certain it is Bash profile. I should just look into this or ask Lance about it. You should be able to modify that and create these kinds of Bash functions. Let's see. So function getattr. I'm doing a git pull first, just in case there's something on the remote repo that I don't have locally. Then here's the dangerous thing. I'm adding everything that's in the repo. And then this is getting the current date, right? So the date gets, this is getting input in the form of date, right? So date is actually a command in Bash. If I just type date, I get the date. And it's parsing it into a day, month, year, and hour, minute, second. As we can see right here, this is just a little parsing snippet that is tied to the date function. And then I'm just doing a git commit, and this is a message I've defined, auto updated, and then dollar. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize this, but this whole line is actually redundant. That's funny. I don't need this at all. I actually trimmed this down. I actually changed this a little bit to the month. Oh, how did I trim this down? I'm looking at this. Well, month, hour, day. Is that really what? I'm gonna have to look at that. But this is actually the only thing that matters here in terms of the message to get. I'm pulling this command from Bash, this date command, and then parsing the date according to this format, and then I'm pushing it. So all this is a definition and a block of code. Excuse me, a block of code that gets executed. Yeah. All right, so we can use VS Code to make, edit MD files. Why are there note-taking apps like Notion? I'm not really familiar with Notion. Notion note-taking. Be nice if there. Well, I guess this is the about. I could just look at this. I've never used Notion, and maybe it's awesome. I don't actually know. If the thing is, you could accomplish what I'm accomplishing with Markdown with any number of other products, and this looks like it could be really cool. The thing that I'm pushing that may not, well, maybe is obvious, maybe is not obvious. The thing I'm pushing is having a single document somewhere that is easily searchable. Command F, Control F, and searching for something and finding it. Being able to instantly copy a chunk of code. This still is funny to me that I have a redundant line in my getattr function. Anyway, just having these things that you can snag as soon as you need them. Whatever your cross-val code is, and whatever your bootstrap code is, whatever plotting functions you have, having them all in one place, I think is, I think it's a game changer, to be honest. If you only have one source of truth, and you add things as you need them and delete things as you don't need them anymore, then that one source of truth is just going to be a quick response. How do we get LaTeX working without Jupyter? Let me see if I can answer that really quick. VS Code render LaTeX. Maybe there's just a straight MathJax. Because I would recommend using MathJax for this. VS Code Markdown with MathJax. Jekyll. I mean, my assumption is that it's really easy to do this. I'm just not sure because I haven't used VS Code in that way. I did used to use Atom in that way. I think the limitation that I don't like is that I can't just go to my notes directory or my notes repo and see rendered MathJax in here. I'd have to have it in a Jupyter notebook to see it in GitHub. But seeing it here, right, seeing it in the VS Code render, I don't think that's out of the question. Let me just see. I think this might actually... Oh. Okay. Yeah. So let me say this. Let me just do this. So for LaTeX, this will... let me just verify this. Won't render in GitHub, but will in VS Code. So let's say we're doing the sum from, I don't know, 1 to 25. Oh, yeah, 1 to 25. And I probably want to, I'll just say x equals 1 to 25. And then I bet this will work with, yep. Okay. And then, you know, a sub x, right? Or, yeah, that's fine. So, you know, we've got some list A, and then we're summing all the indices from 1 to 25. And of course, mathematically, that would be, it's the first index is the Python index 0. But yeah, so apparently this completely does render, but let's just double check that it doesn't render in GitHub because, you know, times are always changing. It's very possible it does render. Turns out it doesn't, as we can see here. So, this isn't, like, to me, this isn't the end of the world, but it just means that if I actually wanted to get the mathematical formulation, I'd have to get it from the VS Code render, which is not too big of a problem. Oh, gosh, we're going past the amount of time that I wanted to allocate today, but there's a thing that I want to recommend called Snappy. And this is for OS 10. So if you've got a Mac, this is really amazing. So I've got just a quick ability to snag like an image of this and move it around and say, you know, this is Sigma. Oh gosh. I can't write quickly with a mouse, but I think you get the idea. That's Sigma. This is start, right? And end is up here or whatever. And so I can write in here and then I can copy it and paste it somewhere, or I can screenshot it directly just like this. And oh gosh. And then I have to find it. Usually I find it by just opening up my Finder window and going to recents. And then I can take that and drop it into the directory that I'm currently working in. So I'm going to do that behind the scenes over here. Sandbox. And then I would, over here, I'd make an images directory. That's normally what I would do. Oh, not an images file. Oops. Remove images and make directory of images. There we go. And I'm going to take that screenshot I just took of this thing, and I dropped it in there. And I'm just going to make another entry for Snappy. I think it's just called Snappy app. And I'll grab the URL for it here, if it actually loads. Oh, that's nice. Okay. Let's see. Well, this isn't a good sign for Snappy, but this is the Snappy app. Easily, you know, screenshot regions of your screen. This is for a Mac, and you know, regions of the screen, write on them, save them, etc. And I'll just put a link to the screenshot I just took. I think it's a really inexpensive, I think it's like $6 or something. I'm not plugging it, I don't work for them or anything, but I use it so much that I think it is actually, it's worth it. Doesn't cost next to anything, so. Oh, you know what? Just gonna. Do this, and I'm going to set this image in my images directory, and just as an example. Okay. Good comment here. Ubuntu has its native screenshot app, as well as Flameshot for taking screen snips with annotation. Awesome. I'm just going to say something like this, screenshotting, and I'll do this, and I'll put just a note here that says Ubuntu has its native screenshot app, as well as Flame, yeah, and yeah, I think I only use Snappy because I've been using it for so long. I'm pretty sure there's something better out there in the world. I'm just used to it. Cool. Thanks so much, everybody. I will make this repo public and clean it up just a little bit, probably not much. Yeah, and if you have any suggestions regarding note taking, those kinds of things, this is my approach. This is a recommended approach, but it's obviously not the only approach. I just think it's quick, and you have everything in one place. You can easily search it.